We're going to start off doing examples with just the one variable, so all these only have x's within them. Coming off the heels of adding and subtracting polynomials, this is a little bit different. These are all monomials. So 2x squared is a monomial, 5x to the third is a monomial, and actually this whole thing is a monomial because there's no addition or subtraction. I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead to number 3 for just a second because there is a negative sign in there, but it follows multiplication. So this negative would not denote subtraction. It's simply multiplying by a negative. And I wanted to go ahead and make that clear up front. This is still a monomial because that negative follows multiplication. So it's not a subtraction sign. Just wanted to kind of clear that up real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show my work very specifically and talk to you about what kind of you can do in your head. You won't have to show your work like this unless it just helps you. But since this is all multiplication, we know there's a property of multiplication that says it doesn't matter what order I multiply things in. So what I can do is I can take this big chunk, since it is a monomial, it's only one term, it's one big chunk, and I can kind of rearrange it like I want. So I've got these coefficients, right? Coefficients are the numbers in front. I can multiply those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chunk those together. And then I know from our previous slides, x to the second and x to the third are going to be multiplied, and we'll talk more about that here in just a second. So coefficients, 2 times 5 is 10, so my new coefficient is 10. X squared would be x times x. X to the third would be x times x times x. So there are a total of 5 x's represented, 2 plus 3. So my new exponent is going to be 5. So we're going to have a new coefficient and a new exponent. So over here, this one, there's no coefficient shown, but we know there's an invisible 1 there. 1 times 6. And this is especially going to be important if there was a negative 1 here. Multiplying by a positive 1 is just going to keep that as a 6. But if it was a negative sign, multiplying by a negative 1 would make it negative 6. So just be careful with that. Then I've got x to the 5th. And if I wanted to expand that, that would be 5 x's. And then x to the 4th would be 4. So my new coefficient is 6. X to the 5th and x to the 4th, there are 9 x's represented there being multiplied together. So this is now 6x to the 9th. Okay. We already talked about number 3, how this is multiplication by a negative and not subtraction, because here's a wrong answer that I see quite a bit. I see 9x to the 4th, and then people try to make it subtraction and make it a minus 8. We can't do that. We're just saying 9 times negative 8. That's all we're saying. That net negative sign will not be subtraction. Then we've got x and x to the 3rd. Now, I didn't point this out, but I need to go back and point it out. Notice all the different ways that multiplication is represented. We've got the dot meaning times, which you have to be careful about because sometimes that looks like a decimal. Then we've got one part in parentheses. You could have both parts in parentheses, or you can have just a couple of parts. So I just wanted to show you all the different ways that could be represented. So 9 times negative 8 is just going to make that coefficient negative, so negative 72. Don't forget that this has an implied exponent of 1. That's probably one of the more common mistakes, especially if you're just doing this in your head and not writing it out like this. Like they just see the 3 and then they see nothing and they put x to the 3rd. That would be incorrect because there's not just 3 x's. There's another 1, which is going to make that x to the 4th. Still a monomial. That negative would only become subtraction if there was another term, which there won't be, at least for a little while. We'll get there eventually. So number 4, now I have 3 things to multiply. So I've got 3 coefficients to multiply together. So negative 4 times 2 times 3. And then x to the 5th, x squared, and the x with the implied exponent of 1. So negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, times 3 is negative 24. That's my new coefficient. 5 x's, 2 x's, and 1 x, so that's 7 plus 1 is 8. So if it helps you to write it out like this, please do so. If you can skip straight from the first line to the last line, that is perfectly okay as well.